talk about the circulation through the heart and the body, and we'll specifically look at series versus parallel flow. Any questions so far? Questions? Okay. Okay, so when you look at the cardiovascular system, we have the heart in the middle, which is not actually shaped like this, but for simplicity, we're going to draw it like this. All right, we have our right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricle. All right, so left side of the heart, right side of the heart. Okay. Now we also have our lungs, which is the pulmonary circulation. And we have our body, right? Other tissues and organs that are that require oxygen and nutrients. So blood essentially leaves the lungs, right? Freshly oxygenated blood leaves the lungs and makes their way to the left atrium, okay? From the left atrium, it's going to move down into the left ventricle through a valve. We'll talk about that valve. And then it's going to leave the left ventricle under high pressure here and move out into the systemic circulation, okay? Now this is going to be the area of that capillary exchange that we talked about. So we have our arteries that are leaving the left ventricle, they become arterioles, and they finally become capillaries at the site of exchange. So this is the capillary site of exchange. Okay. So now at this point, the blood is no longer oxygenated. It has transferred all of its oxygen and nutrients to the cellular tissues, and then it's going to return waste products back to the heart. It's going to go right back into the right atrium. Okay. And then from the right atrium, again, blood is going to go through one of those AV valves, make its way to the right ventricle, and then it's going to leave the heart once again and make its way right back to the lungs. Okay. And so essentially we have deoxygenated blood, and I'm going to draw it in blue. Deoxygenated blood here, right, leaving the body tissues, going back to the right side of the heart. All of the blood in the right heart is deoxygenated. When I say deoxygenated, it doesn't have oxygen. It has waste products that's coming from those tissues. Whereas the left side of the heart has freshly oxygenated blood. Okay, left side of the heart, left atria, left ventricle, those arteries that we spoke about. Okay, so on this side we have arteries, arterioles, oops. Whereas on this side we have our venules and veins. Okay. Now what we want to also distinguish here is the pulmonary circulation and the systemic circulation. So the pulmonary circulation comprises both atria, right, as well as the vessels that are leaving the heart. Okay, so this entire region here is your pulmonary circulation. Whereas the arteries, arterioles, the ventricles comprise the systemic circulation. So basically the body system. This is your systemic circulation. Okay. And this is how blood moves through the body, how it becomes oxygenated in the lungs. Right? Remember that. We're going to put oxygenated here. We breathe in oxygen, it's transferred into those blood vessels and then transported around the body, goes to our tissues, it's exchanged for waste, and that waste will then leave through the lungs again in the case of carbon dioxide, and then through the liver and kidneys in the case of other waste products. Okay. Now we also want to bear in mind that there are two options for the circulation. There's a series flow and then there's a parallel flow. Okay, so let's go on. So we basically have our lungs. Is everyone done with this? I'll draw it on another paper. Is everyone good with this? Yes? Draw this. Okay, so when we talk about series versus parallel flow, we're talking about the direction of flow and the options for whether or not there are several different areas for that vessel to go. Okay, so we have our lungs, okay, which then sends blood to the heart, which then sends blood to the body, which then sends blood back to the heart, which sends blood back to the lungs. And so this is an example of series flow. When we say series, we mean that blood has to leave one area, it has to go to the other, it has to go to the other, it has to go to the other, one after the other after the other. So this is series. Blood does not choose if it wants to go to the heart or the body. It has to go one to the other to the other. Okay. When we talk about parallel flow is within this bigger series, and this is an area that students often confuse. The parallel flow happens within the bigger picture of the series flow. And so let's say we have blood in the body. This blood can decide to go to the heart, not the heart, let's say the liver. Sorry, the liver. It can go to the kidneys. It can go to the bladder. It can go to the limbs, etc., etc., etc. So this blood has some options when it gets to the systemic circulation. And so we say that the systemic circulation is in parallel. Okay. So this is parallel. Okay. So the bigger picture here, the series is the entire cardiovascular circulation. Whereas if you look specifically within the body system, blood has some options. It can go to the liver or to the kidney or to the bladder. So different amounts of blood will go into different organs, and that's parallel flow. Okay, whereas the bigger picture here is series flow. All right, does that make sense? Any questions about that? Any questions on that? Similarly, within the lungs, we also have parallel flow because blood doesn't go to both lungs, right? Blood can go to the right lung, blood can go to the left lung. Okay, and so here we also have parallel flow. Right. Okay, any questions on that bit? Let's keep moving. Okay, so just as we just mentioned, the pulmonary circulation is supplied by the right side of the heart, right, bringing that deoxygenated blood from the body to the lungs to be reoxygenated. And so vessels that are coming from the heart to the lungs, and then from the lungs back to the heart, right? That's going to be your pulmonary circulation. Your systemic circulation is going to be coming from the left side of your heart, right? Just like we mentioned just now. It's going to be taking blood from the left ventricle out to all your peripheral tissues and organs, and then back into the right side of your heart. Okay? So pulmonary circulation versus systemic circulation. Like we just mentioned, series flow is going to be the entire cardiovascular system. That's your series flow. Blood goes from the heart to the body to the heart to the lungs, heart to the body, heart to the lungs. Parallel flow is going to be within the systemic and within the pulmonary circuit. So they are part of the bigger series flow. Okay. We also want to mention that the cardiovascular system is closed. Again, I'll mention this. It doesn't open to any external surface like your urogenital system, your gastrointestinal system. Those are open systems. The CVS is closed, right, unless we introduce something into that vessel. So flow through systemic and pulmonary circuits happen in series. Again, series meaning one after the other, after the other. Blood does not have an option here. It must go to those four places. Whereas parallel flow, blood has some options here. When it leaves the heart, it can go to the brain. Let's say 20% goes to the brain, 10% goes to the GI, some goes to the liver, another 10% goes to the kidneys, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And so the systemic circulation has options for blood flow, and this is what we call parallel flow. All right. Let's look at the coronary circulation. Let's look at the coronary circulation. So the heart is in parallel with other organs. What does that mean? This basically means that although the heart is the main pump, it's the main source of the cardiovascular circulation, it still is an organ and it needs to get blood supply. Right? So just like the brain and the liver and the lungs, the heart has to get its own nutrients and it has to get rid of its waste products. And so it's within the parallel flow of the systemic circulation. Okay? Now, one would think that because the heart pumps oxygenated blood, or because it pumps deoxygenated blood, that it can immediately get its own blood supply from the blood in the chamber. That is not correct. So the blood in the chamber does not actually give oxygen and nutrients to the heart. Rather, we have coronary vessels that are part of the outer part of the heart. Okay? These coronary vessels are pretty much divided into two. One goes to the left side of the heart and one goes to the right side of the heart. And they're coming off of the main vessel that leaves the heart, which is the aorta. So the aorta is this large vessel on top of the heart, right? It has three main branches coming off. And right off the first part of this aorta is those two vessels, the right coronary and the left coronary, okay? Now the heart is pretty selfish in this way. It takes the first bit of blood from the first major vessel that leaves. And it's going to grab that first, let's say 10 or 15% before anyone else has an opportunity to get blood. And that is rightly so. If the heart is not beating, no one else will get blood anyway. So the heart selfishly takes the very first blood